Congratulations! You found Peachland Radio on your digital dial. Stick around. We think you'll like what you hear.
What's a radio? When I was 10 years old, I fell in love. That love affair continues today. And 62 years later, it has birthed a love child, Peachland Radio. From the moment I heard the sounds emanating from the radio next to my bed when I was a kid, I was in love. I was able to fall asleep to the voice resonating from that little box. Whether it was the Hollywood actors and actresses portraying roles like Dana Andrews in I Was a Communist for the FBI, or Alan Ladd as Dan Holliday in Box 13. And by the way, the premise of the program was that Dan Holliday was an author who wrote mystery novels. To get ideas for his novels, he placed an advertisement in a newspaper saying, "Adventure wanted, will go anywhere, do anything, Box 13. The ads always brought fun adventures of all kinds, from racketeer victims to psychotic killers looking for fun. Most of the episodes were based on Dan Holliday replying to a letter he received at Box 13. Well, I was right there with him on every case. I was also fascinated about how on a cold winter's night in Edmonton from my bedroom on 93rd Street and 104th Avenue, I was able to hear Wes Bowen from Salt Lake City close out his evening jazz show on KSL with those unforgettable words, "Jazz is great, so watch out." That was the night I fell in love with jazz. But how could I be hearing a man thousands of miles away on my little radio in my bedroom in Edmonton, Alberta? Every night made for new surprises. It was like I had found my own private genie in a bottle to be summoned each night and at my request grant another wish. That's one of the benefits of living in a climate where the colder it got at night, the better the reception. One night I found Ira Blue high atop the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, broadcasting from KGO. It was his nightly visit with celebrities in the ballroom. You could hear the glasses tinkling in the background. It was music to my ears. I was being transported to the table next to him, overhearing his conversations. That to me is the true magic of radio. You can be transported in your imagination to anywhere the person or persons on the air takes you. And so it was in that moment in time that I fell in love with the idea of becoming a radio personality. Not just an announcer reading the news, but a real radio personality. I wanted to become my own Wes Bowen, Ira Blue, and even John Dolan, a local DJ in Edmonton. In the morning when I woke up for breakfast, my mother would have Pepper Young's Family on, Ma Perkins or the Happy Gang, all playing on the kitchen radio. In those days, my dad had a radio in every room in the house. That seemed to be the case even when I married and had a family as well. I too had a radio in every room, even a transistor radio in the bathroom. One day I asked my dad if he could set up a speaker in the kitchen and I could broadcast to my mother. I remember the day like it was yesterday. I went to religious school on Sunday with my friends, and when I returned, he told me to open the door to the den. And there it was, my very own little radio station. A turntable, a microphone, and a series of wires that led to the kitchen connected to a 6-inch speaker that magically transported my voice to the kitchen to my biggest fan, my mother. Every day I would broadcast to her before I went to school, and in the evening when she was washing the dishes, I would get out the evening newspaper and read her the weather, the news, the sports, and play music. My commercials consisted of me reading from ads in the newspaper. And now fast forward to 2014, and here I am in my den in Peachland, Canada, and just like when I was 10 years old broadcasting to my mother, I'm still fascinated on how this all happens through your computer, which is now the new kitchen radio. With all this wonderful technology, the cyber gods have allowed me again to experience this little 10-year-old and to fulfill my dream of having my very own little radio station, only this time it's real and virtual. And speaking of 10 years old and the state of radio today, when my 10-year-old grandson saw an old antique radio of mine from the 1940s sitting on the shelf in my den, he said, "Gampy, what's that?" And I said, "Well, Taylor, that's a radio." And he responded with a curious question, "What's a radio?" What's a radio? What's a radio? And I said, That's what we listened to at home in the 40s. And he said, oh, like when we listened to Mummy's radio station in the car. Now, I'm sure that each of the hosts that we have invited to be on our station might share very similar stories about how they too had a dream to one day have a radio program that they loved and were passionate about. And that's what we have done here at Peachland Radio. Gathered friends I've known for years and others I've just met to create a family of radio artists. If your voice is truly the messenger of your soul, then we have assembled a group of individuals who are inspiring souls. So I invite you to listen to their voices as they share their stories and bring you the music that has inspired them and brought them great joy. And along the way, we hope the words and music will resonate for you and add a richness to your life that you can't get anywhere else on the digital dial. And that has become a digital dial. Just like my little grandson will never really grow up with the appreciation of what it was like to listen to a real radio in the 40s, he will get to experience a new kind of radio. So it's like we're bringing back original radio with new technology. Now, I did leave some of the most important parts of my radio journey out. Like, I left some of it out, but here's some names that might resonate. I mentioned to you John Dolan, the local DJ on Chad and Edmonton that I was telling you about. Well, my dad knew him and arranged for me to go into the station on Sunday afternoons and sit in one of his control rooms and record shows. I yearned to be on the air. And when the opportunity came up to take a job as a DJ in Dawson Creek, BC, or go to university, the choice was obvious. My eyesight was failing at the time, and I couldn't read the copy, so I chose university. But I never left the microphone. My love of jazz and a pitch to a local radio station, KGVO in Missoula, where I attended the University of Montana, got me a weekend gig, Saturday nights at midnight. The worst time in radio. But for me, I was ecstatic. I was finally on the air on a real radio station with a real operator. I was hosting the first and only jazz show in the state and hawking India Madras shirts for the Hall Tree, a men's clothing store downtown. But boy, was I happy. When I got married and we lived in Richmond, and I was working for the Big Brothers organization, one of the Big Brothers on my caseload, Michael Dickinson, who worked at CHQM in sales in Vancouver, took me to lunch and got me excited about being one of the owners of an AM radio station for Richmond and Delta. So we got two other Big Brothers excited, and thus began the next step towards my dream. But unfortunately, like many dreams, they too get shattered. I never did get behind the microphone, and I had to sell off my shares when there was repeated asks for more money, and that kind of got the better of me. And so reluctantly, I sold my shares, but tucked the dream in my back pocket. Since then, I have been both an owner and or a syndicated host on CFUN, Talk America, and 3 separate internet radio networks. And I did leave something else out about an important part of this journey. I pitched a local Vancouver station in 1995, AM 1040, on the idea of a live Saturday night variety show. Brian Brent, the station program manager at the time, told me I could have 3 hours from 9 to midnight on Saturday nights because that's their dead time anyway. In other words, nobody was listening, so he had nothing to lose. So he assigned me an operator, Shane, and offered to pay me a salary of $0, an offer I was happy to accept. I finally had the chance to create my own little radio station within a radio show. And so Big Al's Dance Party was born. We called it Memories, Music, and Mayhem, and it became the most listened to live show in Vancouver on Saturday nights. We even beat Finkelstein's 45s on CBC, and some nights even CKNW's Owl Prowl show with Jack Cullen. Jack would even listen some nights. We were number 1 for 2 years, and it truly was because we were personality radio, a dying breed in today's confused radio landscape. Radio is desperately seeking its identity these days. And just like my 10-year-old grandson said, "What's a radio?" The question to the universe, to the media, to the radio universe is, what's a radio? What is a radio? We will be bringing back those golden days of personality radio to Peachland Radio. On Big Al's Dance Party, we had Marvelous Mindy with TV Trivia, the doo-wop gal, Mickey Clark in his 78s, talking jazz with Arnie May, the owner of Rossini's in its heyday, and Steve from the famous Blue Note in New York, getting us interviews with jazz legends like Cal Tjader and Maynard Ferguson. My producer was Cousin Fred. My operator at times was Rockin' Rob. and the owner of Unforgettable Pizza would drop by with free pizzas for the unexpected crowds that would gather. We never knew who was going to drop by. One night, a young crooner from Burnaby dropped by with his manager, Beverly Delich, to celebrate his 21st birthday. His parents were there, as was Ray Carroll from The Platters, local jazz singers Lorraine Foster and June Cast. His name? Michael Bublé. There were so many guests over the 2 years that it's hard to keep track, especially the number of listeners that were in the thousands. One of those listeners was a guy from Anchorage, Alaska, who could pick us up on a cloudy night just like I picked up stations on a clear night in Edmonton. He was transported to our show through the magic of radio. We became pen pals, and he sent me a tape of a 1932 swing band he was sending to the Smithsonian. I want to bring back that magic to radio. It's my gift, and I think my legacy, as I doubt our chances are too great once we pass certain age milestones. Although I heard about the guy who started jogging at 90 and then ran in the Senior Olympics. Let's just say I'll be happy with this legacy. And so, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus, and he brought me here to Peachland to finally realize my dream of having my own little radio station for all of you to enjoy. And as Paul Harvey would say, and now you know the rest of the story.